Minutes today talking about the digital efficiency framework, 3 steps to getting your digital life organized so you can spend a little more time with your non-digital life. We all have way too much stuff coming in, and this video will show you some ways to sort the stuff that comes in better and then limit extra junk from ever arriving. And it's really 3 parts. There's processing, inputs, and growth. So let's just dig right in, start talking about processing, ways to handle all the stuff that comes in and where you can put it. The areas of processing I'm going to hit real quick here are events, useful sites like bookmarks, things you want to read or watch, things you want to remember to do, like tasks, things you just want to remember, and then other stuff you want to save. So for events, it's easy. It's a calendar. If you get an email with an invite to an event, put it on your calendar, archive the email, move on with your life. I don't think we need to talk too much about this. This applies to any input you might have. If someone leaves a quick note for you and you jot it on your desk on a sticky pad for an event, put it on your calendar, toss the sticky pad out. Get stuff in the events and move on. Get it on your calendar. For bookmarks, there are really 2 kinds of bookmarks I see. There are frequent bookmarks and infrequent bookmarks. So frequent bookmarks I usually put on my Chrome toolbar here. You can see the middle line there of things that I access often. Things like weather sites, work sites, banking, stuff I'm going to hit, if not every day, at least a few times a week. So I have easy, quick access to it. Those are easy enough to save, but saving all my bookmarks there gets awfully messy. So I use a different tool for that. There's a lot of different great bookmarking tools out there. This is a screenshot from one called My Mind, but we'll get into specific tools at the end of this. But just as for all the other sites you want to save, but you don't necessarily need regularly, or maybe not even at all, but you want to save it just in case. So things like products you like, Google tips, parenting reference info, all that kind of stuff. Throw it into a system like this that you can get to later. There's a third kind of site you want to save, though. These are sites that you specifically do want to get to. Again, things you want to read later, things you want to watch later. So you come across a great article you want to read, you don't have time for it, or a video someone says you should watch, you throw it in your consumption list. And so in my case here, there's a screenshot from Pocket. Instapaper is quite similar, and there's other options out there. But whenever you see something you want to consume, throw it in here, and then, again, move on and get to the rest of your day. If you have an email saying you should watch this video, reply back, say, thanks so much, throw it in your consumption list, and archive the email and move on. You'll get back to this list at some point, and we'll talk about that in a little while. But anywhere stuff comes in for things you want to consume, put it in here and then get rid of the way it came in to keep that end of things pretty clean. Next is your task list. I think you all have task lists. This is a screenshot from Asana, a great task product, but you may have whatever you use, and that's fine. Again, if you have something come in that you need to do, put it on your task list. And again, get rid of that thing that came in. Get rid of the email, reply to the email, throw away the sticky pad, whatever it is. Get it on your task list. And again, how you manage your task list is well beyond the scope of this little video, but tons of videos out there on YouTube for managing task lists. But just have a task list in place and be sure to populate it. The next one is one not as many people have, is a flashcard or SRS, a spaced repetition system. And again, digging into the nuances of that is beyond today, but people often think, I should remember that quote, I should remember that number, I should remember whatever it is, but they don't do anything to actually remember it. In a SRS system, a spaced repetition system, is a great way to do that. So the example on the screen here, we do a lot of accessibility work with my agency, and one of the agencies or one of the frameworks behind that is WCAG, the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines. I just noticed now I spelled accessibility wrong, but it's my own internal tool, so it's okay. But I want to remember that, so that will bubble up periodically. With spaced repetition, when you put things in, every time you answer the flashcard correct in a day, it pushes a little further out. So if you get it right today, it'll show you tomorrow. If you get it right tomorrow, it'll push it out 3 days. If you get it right again, it'll push it out 2 weeks. And before long, something like this one doesn't show up for me, but every couple months. So you can have a lot of cards in here, a lot of things to remember, but every day you only have a couple to deal with. And if you stay on top of it, it can work well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. And the last thing you need to have for stuff coming in is just the place for your other stuff, because we covered a lot of places up there, but you still have a place to put gift ideas or books you want to read or code snippets or your printer cartridge model numbers or just random stuff. You need a place for that. So Evernote is on the screen here. That's a great place for that. Lots of other places for that. There's Notion and Rome Research and, again, hundreds of possibilities here. And I don't care which one you use. Just have a place you can put that stuff that you know it will be there and you can get it out of wherever it came from. My wife sent me her list of things she wants for Christmas. That's great. I put it in this system so I'd have a reference for it. I didn't have to keep that email sitting in my inbox for weeks and weeks. I knew where that was when I wanted to get to it. So having a place for all that stuff is good, but it all comes from these inputs. And so you know how to process stuff that comes your way. And now if you've processed things correctly, you're going to have a calendar full of meetings and a bunch of stuff you want to read and 37 items on your task list, but everything is where it belongs and it's waiting for you to tackle it at the right time. So now let's try to control the flow of stuff that comes in a bit. And the way I see that, there are three kinds of inputs that come into you. There's controlled inputs, variable inputs, and uncontrolled inputs. So controlled inputs are things you have 100% control over. No one else is ever putting things in these systems. And those two we've already talked about, your flashcards or spaced repetition system. You're building that list how you want. And so you have to deal with the consequences of how much stuff you put in there. And then same with your consumption list. The things you want to read later, you want to watch later, you're the one putting on the list. Your coworker may have recommended it or whatever, but you put it on that list. And to be honest, my consumption list almost never gets to zero, but it's not bottomless either. There is an end to it, and it's stuff I've put there. I can choose what's going on. So you have full control over those inputs. That's easy. Where it gets tricky, and probably the worst one, is the variable inputs. And so you can't fully control all these. Email is the biggest one. We'll talk about that, where other people have access to give you these inputs. The key with all the variable inputs, though, is you can get them to zero. These aren't bottomless either. None of these that we'll talk about in variable are bottomless. You can get them to zero. And so email is the big one for a lot of systems. We'll talk about that for a second first. Email, in theory, you should get to zero. The process of getting things to inbox zero, again, there's dozens of videos out there on that. Very quickly, I want to hit just kind of the common framework I follow, is these 5 steps for an email. Is delete, delegate, respond, defer, or do. So any email that comes in, you should be able to do one of those 5 things. You can delete it. Delete also means archive. In my case, in Gmail, I don't delete much. I archive it, but get it out of the inbox. Related to that, unsubscribe like crazy from newsletters and stuff, and anything you get in there. Keep it before it gets to you. Delegate, send it to someone else. If someone else needs to handle it, let them handle it and move on. Respond. Some emails just need a response. So respond and archive it and move on. Deferring is a tough one, where if there's a question to be dealt with later, you need to do something with, you can add it to your task list. There's different ways depending what email system you need. But if you need to defer it, find a proper way to defer it other than just letting it hang out in your inbox for weeks. And then do. A lot of emails you can do something with right away. If someone says, hey, I need my password reset, you can go reset their password, send it to them, and archive the email. Some need to go into your to-do list. And we talked a lot about the do options just a few minutes ago, so a lot of those play into it as well. But yeah, email is a big variable input, and the more you can limit that, the better. And again, that's so different for every person, but having a proper framework is good. But I think where people fall down on emails, they don't have the places to put things. They get a list of Christmas gift ideas from their wife and like, well, I'll leave it here so I don't forget about it. And if you can put it somewhere else, that's a better way to deal with it. Another variable input is your RSS newsfeed we talked about. It's, again, not bottomless. You can get it to zero, but if you subscribe to the right sites, like TechCrunch is a site I like, but gosh, they post 30 or 40 articles a day and it adds up so quick. So I unsubscribe from that. The beauty of RSS and getting sites that come in through a newsfeed is there's no filters, no algorithms, nothing stopping it. You sign up for a site or a blog or whatever, and everything they post comes to you. The beauty of this is, again, there's no algorithm getting in the way. There's no filters. More importantly, if a site stops posting, it doesn't matter either. I subscribe to a lot of my friends' blogs who they don't write frequently, but I don't have to go check it to see if they've written. If they do write, it shows up here. If they don't, it doesn't, and it's okay. So this is a screenshot from Feedly. It's one of the more popular RSS readers. But I prefer this over traditional news sources, again, because it gets to zero. I subscribe to things, I see what they've written, and at the end, I'm at the end. It doesn't just keep saying load more, load more, load more. I get to the end of it. I have kind of a lot in mind right now. This is a screenshot actually from today. But I can plow through it pretty quick. With Feedly, I can use the J key just to jump from article to article to article. If I see something worth reading, if I have a minute, I'll read it now. But more often, I'll just put it on my consumption list and read it later, when I get to it. So I can get this to zero. I can stay on top of this, see what's new in the world, see what's going on, and then articles I want to dig into are on my consumption list to dig into later. The last variable input is your quick notes. This is a screenshot from Google Keep, but you could use that or Apple Notes or paper notes or whatever you want. Everyone has a system just to scratch down quick notes and ideas that come to them throughout the day. But again, you should get this to zero as frequently as you're able to. And while you do control this one 100%, I call it a variable input because if a coworker's standing there and say, hey, can you do this thing for me? You're going to jot it down. They essentially, it's kind of on them that they created that note for you. But again, get it to zero. And I'm bad about getting this one to zero. I'll often leave 2 or 3 things in here. Like I'm going to do those soon. So they're like tasks hanging out in there and they shouldn't be. They should be on my task list where they belong. So get this to zero. So again, use whatever system you want, but as long as you have places to put everything, you have your consumption list, you have your storages, you have your to-do list, nothing should live in here. It should go where it belongs so you can stay on top of your world. And then the other kind of input is uncontrolled inputs. This is news sites and social media. And I call them inputs to be nice, but they're entertainment is really all they are. Google News, Apple News, CNN, Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, whatever. I use all these. I'm not saying they're bad, but consider them the toys they are. They're not places you should be going consistently if you want news, if you want information and stuff. They're a place to go for entertainment. They all have heavy algorithms. They are all bottomless. You can scroll forever in all those. And they have heavy algorithms or heavy incentives to help you stay longer and waste more of your time. So it's a dangerous place to go. And that's why I like RSS for my news, because I can subscribe to this place I want to subscribe to. I try to subscribe to things on both sides of whatever issue, whether it's political or it's Android versus Apple or whatever it is. So I can get both sides and I get everything. It's not filtered down, but I get to a zero. I can say, oh, I'm caught up and I'm done, versus going on Facebook or CNN or whatever. You're never getting to the bottom. So again, not saying not to use them, especially if you're like a social media manager, you might need to, but consider them toys and treat them that way. The last part of this is growth. We've touched on a few of the pieces. I'll kind of dig into that, but always be improving. We're at a place in the world where there's so many opportunities for growth and so many ways to be improving. So a few things I want to touch on based on what we've seen. Really two main breakouts. There's things you should do daily and the things you should do as time allows. So daily, just two things I think you should look at from the list are the flashcards and then your news feed. And I love all the acronyms in the SRS and RSS. I know it gets confusing, but it works well. So like with the flashcards in particular, if you can have, say you have 100 cards in there, of quotes you want to memorize and things you want to learn and numbers to know, that seems like a lot. But once you get in the habit and they start getting spaced, the 100 cards is really only going to show you like 5 or 10 a day. At a couple seconds a card, you're talking like a minute or two a day. It's not a big deal if you can do it daily. And 2 minutes a day on flashcards is way better than doing 20 minutes once a week. One, it'll be a little bit quicker, but also the spaced algorithms that they have for when they should show you the cards again will work so much better. So if you can plan your day around an extra 2 minutes for flashcards, it's well worth doing. And again, my tools link will have some references to get you started on that. And then same with your news feed. Hit that every day if you can. If it gets overwhelming, take some news out of it. Again, TechCrunch is a good example because it's a great site, great stories. Man, they have a lot, and I get way behind. So I took them out of my reader. I don't follow them anymore. I follow more specific ones instead, and keeps it more manageable. So I can hit zero on both of these pretty much every day. And then as time allows, which varies greatly. If you have little kids at home, it's different. If your kids have moved out of the house or you're single or whatever it is, it's going to vary a lot. But you have your consumption list to try to get all the stuff you want to read and watch. You should try to read and watch at some point. My daily task list includes one item to try to read at least one item out of the consumption list. And I get to it most days. So I'll read 3 or 4 items out of there a week, and it continues to pile up a bit. But at least I'm making some progress on it. And then the other side we didn't really get into is books and podcasts. I mean, as time allows, you should be reading, you should be listening to podcasts. If you want to grow, those are good things to be doing as well. So I've thrown a whole lot at you in a very short period of time here. Just a couple quick tips to get started. And it's really not as bad as it seems because most of you already have a lot of these systems in place. You seem to kind of tighten things up a little bit to kind of get the flywheel humming. So what do you have? I'm guessing most of you have a calendar, you have an email system, you track bookmarks somehow, you have some sort of task system, you probably have your reference system in Evernote or something you throw things in, and you have a way you keep quick notes. Maybe not all of you, but I bet most of you have those. And I would guess most of you do not have an RSS reader, a proper consumption list, you probably have bookmarks and stuff to get back to, and a proper SRS flashcard system. So really you need to only set up 3 systems. There's free versions of all those systems, and they're not overwhelming to set up. If you get that going, then you have a place for everything, and you can, again, kind of get things to zero and stay on top of your world. Getting to zero could be tough for some of you too, though. You're going to say, this sounds great, but I have 8,000 emails in my inbox. I'm going to be months getting to zero. So a tip here is just to go instant zero with some if you need to. Not saying delete all those emails, but you can make a folder in your inbox, in your email system called old emails, and take your 8,000 emails and drag them all over to that folder. You're at zero. Now work on staying at zero. Deal with the emails as they come in, handle them the proper way, put them in systems. And then as you have time, go back to that old email folder and work through some of those old 8,000 emails and respond where you need to and pull what you need to out of there and work on that. Same goes if you sign up for an RSS, if you use Feedly and you miss it for a couple days and then suddenly you have 1,000 unread items, just mark all as read, unsubscribe from the noisemakers, and go instant zero on that if you need to. It's not as bad as it seems. And again, with email especially, you can't really delete all of them and declare bankruptcy, although some people do. They say, hey, I'm out. I'm starting from scratch. I wouldn't recommend that. I'd say put them in a folder to deal with and then keep that clean new inbox that you can keep at zero, but still work on that folder when you're able to. Yeah, so that's some basic tips on getting started. And then again, I showed you some tools along the way. micmel.com/tools is my up-to-date list, because this video, I don't know when you're watching it, my tools probably have changed from when I first did the video, so I'll keep that link updated. So these frameworks still applies to it, but you can use the newer tools if you want to see what I'm using, or again, use whatever you want to use. Everything I have in here is pretty common practices. It's just finding the right tools and making sure you have them in place. And then more details at deframework.com, just for kind of a better breakdown of everything we've talked about today. So hope this is all helpful for you. Reach out wherever, leave a comment on this video or on my blog, or email, whatever, if you have questions or ideas, and be happy to help. Thanks so much.